Hi students, welcome to today's session. In our today's session we are going to see about sheet metal seams. Let's move into the topic. Objectives. At the end of this topic you shall be able to: what is seams? The different types of seams. Let's see about sheet metal seams. The mechanical seams are employed when joining light and medium gauge metal sheets in sheet metal construction. Types of metal seams are: grooved seam, Pittsburgh seam, dovetail seam. This dovetail seam is further divided into plain dovetail seam, flange dovetail seam, beaded dovetail seam, double seam, butt seam, lap seam, slip joint seam, locked grooved joint. This seam is further divided into external and internal locked grooved joints. Stake joint. It is further divided into straight stake joint, zigzag stake joint. Let's see about detailed view of grooved seam. Grooved seam is most commonly used for joining sheet metal. This seam consists of two folded edges called locks. The edges are hooked together and locked with a hand groover or a grooving machine. Let's know what is Pittsburgh seam is. Pittsburgh seam is also called hammer lock or hobo lock. This seam is used as a longitudinal corner seam for various types of pipes such as ductwork. The advantage of the Pittsburgh seam is that the single lock can be turned on a curve, and the pocket lock can be formed on a flat sheet and rolled to fit the curve as shown in given below figure. Dovetail seam is an easy and convenient method of joining flanges to collars. Dovetail seams are used mainly on round or elliptical pipe and rarely on rectangular ducts. There are three types of dovetail seams. They are plain dovetail, beaded dovetail and the flange dovetail. Let's see about plain dovetail seam. It is used when joining a collar to a flange without the use of solder, screws or rivet. It is made by slitting the end of the collar and bending every other tab as shown in below figure. The straight tabs are bent over the part to be joined and the bent tabs act as stops. This seam may be made watertight by soldering around the joint. Let's see about flange dovetail seam. This seam is used where neat appearance and strength are important. The seam shown in figure is the assembly of a flange-type dovetail seam for a cylindrical pipe. It is commonly used where pipes intersect with a metal plate such as furnace flues, ceilings, etc. This is similar to the plain dovetail seam, except a bead is formed around one end of the cylinder by a beading machine. This bead acts as the stop for the flange to rest upon and the tabs are bent over to hold the flange in the desired place. Let's see about double seams. There are two types of double seams. One type is used for making irregular fittings such as square elbows, boxes, offsets, etc. This seam is used on corners, and can also be used as a longitudinal seam on small square and rectangular ducts. A double edge is formed and placed over the single edge, and the seam is completed step by step as shown in below figure. The other type is used to fasten bottoms to cylindrically shaped jobs such as pails, tanks, etc. The steps in making this type of double seam is shown in below figure, where A is turned on the machine. B is burred on the burring machine. The bottom is snapped on the body as in C and is pinned down as in D. Finally, the seam is completed by using a mallet as in E. This seam is called bottom double seam or knocked up seam. If the seam is not turned up, as in D, the seam is called pan down seam. Let's see about butt seam. This seam has two pieces butt together and soldered as shown in below figure. One is flanged butt seam and the other one is butt seam. Let's see about lap seam. The lap seam is made by lapping the edge of one piece over the other piece and soldered as shown in below figure. Figure shows plain lap, sunt lap, inside lap and outside lap seams. Let's see about slip joint seam. This seam is used for a longitudinal corner seam as shown in below figure. The assembly of the seam consists of a single lock A and a double lock B. The single lock is slipped into the double lock C to complete the seam. For making pipes with a slip joint seam, proper care should be taken to see that the corners of the metal are squared and the edges are trimmed. The proper slip joint is shown as A and improper as B. If the edges are not trimmed, it will twist the pipe out of shape and may cause the edges of the pipe to be uneven. Let's see about locked grooved joint. Many methods are employed to join and strengthen the pieces of a sheet metal. One of the common joint is called locked grooved joint. This is usually done on straight lines. The work pieces to be joined are made in the form of a hook, inserted and locked using a groover. When they are interlocked and tightened only then it is called a grooved joint. When the grooved joint is clinched down, making one side plain using a groover is called a locked grooved joint. Let's see about external and internal locked grooved joint. This joint is used to join the two ends of a sheet metal to form a circular shape in longitudinal direction. When the seam is formed outside as shown in below figure, then it is called external locked grooved joint. If the seam is formed using grooved mandrel, then it is called internal locked grooved joint. Let's see about locked grooved joint allowance. To arrive the size, width, of the fold to suit a particular groover, subtract the thickness by 3 times from the width of the groove. Let's see about stake joint. It is one of the folded joint and is used in light articles such as toss. It is also called as joint. In this type of joint, clips are cut on one pieces to be jointed. Clips are inserted in slots and folded flat either in one direction or alternate clips are folded in opposite direction. Types of stake joint are straight stake joint, zigzag stake joint. Let's see about straight stake joint. In this joint, clips and slots are in a line and the clips are inserted directly into the slots, folded and smashed in opposite direction. Next, let's see about zigzag stake joint. In this joint, clips are inserted in the slots and alternate clips are folded in opposite direction. Let's see the question session for this topic. Try to answer the following question in 10 seconds. Which seam is called as hammer lock seam? Option A. Pittsburgh seam, option B. Stake joint seam, option C. Slip joint seam, option D. Flange dovetail seam. Your time starts now. I think you are right. The correct answer is option A. Pittsburgh seam. I think you gained a plenty of knowledge from today's topic. Let's see our remaining topic of week 16 in our next video. Thank you. For queries, visit www.nemelearningonline.in/moodle.